Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be doing some really fun stuff. For today, what we have is a big front mount intercooler that's going to go directly front and center in the vehicle. I'm going to be relocating this and putting it in a different spot of where the factory one is. As we can see, you can actually see the stock one right here in front. So this is the stock one. It's a black one that I have here. This is just slightly smaller than this one that I have right here. So this should give us a little bit of performance and keep the intake air temps down, but it's not overly big to the point where your turbo is going to take too long to spool up or anything like that. So this should be just the right size for this little motor to help us get some pretty good gains out of it. The size that I went with on this is 27 by 7 inches tall by 2.5 inches thick. That should be just about right for what we're looking for, and it should be the 27-inch length is going to allow us to mount this on here without too many issues. I'm going to have to take a look and see what we need to mount this and how we're going to do it. I also have some 2.5 inch just aluminum piping here. So this is what we're going to need to connect over here on the sides to allow it to go to the factory piping. And I also do have some 2.5 inch couplers here that are just going to go on the sides. This is a 2.5 inch diameter that we're hooking into here, and then our factory piping that it goes to down there underneath that red hose should also be 2.5 inch. I will have to confirm that, but I'm pretty sure it is. These pieces, I think that these are only like 4 or 5 inches long. These may be too short. I might need to find another size for these that's going to be a little bit longer and allow me to do this. I've seen a couple people do these on like the forums, and there's just right up. I haven't actually seen anybody with a video on a full install of how to do this. This is a universal kit essentially. This isn't anything, I haven't seen like a kit that comes for this car that gives you like a step-by-step instruction. So anything you do is going to be aftermarket and you're going to be fabbing it up. So this seems to be the pretty common consensus though in the route that people do go. This is the best size to get, the 27 inch by 7 inches tall and by 2.5 inches wide. So we're going to probably mock up the front bumper on here and take a look and see where exactly it is that I want to route this and where to mount it. Probably we're going to be mounting it on the back side of this crash bar if we're able to do that. So that's going to be the plan I'm going to stick with right now. Before we get into doing that or anything, there is one thing that I do want to do to this before we go ahead and start mounting this. I do want to paint a logo decal on the very front of this. So what I'm going to do is try to stencil out a pattern that I want on here. So I'll show you what that looks like and what I'm going to do here. So luckily I do have another car that I can just take some quick dimensions off of that I need. So this makes things a lot easier. The front mount is going to be mounted right on the back side of this right here. So this kind of tells me how big my decal can be, how tall it can be, and also how long it can be. So I'm just going to take some measurements in here, and I'm not going to go all the way to the very edges when I do my decal. I'll probably start it right about here and end somewhere right over here, as long as it's centered. And then we probably have about 4 or 5 inches or so of height. So that's how tall we can make our decal. Before I go ahead and actually stencil this intercooler right here, I need to see where this is going to be setting to know whether or not my logo that I want to put on here is going to be centered. So I plan on mounting this up first. There are a couple of mounting brackets that come in here that you can use, that these bolt right directly into the top here, and there's also some on the bottom too as well if you were to mount from the bottom and the top. So I'm probably going to mount this directly to the back side of the crash bar. I think that that's probably just the best option that I have to go with here, but we'll see if I need to fab up anything else. Before we go ahead and do any mounting, one thing that we're going to do is we're going to start by removing our active grill shutter on the grill that's already mounted on here. So right where this sits, right behind the bottom lower grill, this is exactly where I want my front mount intercooler to be mounted. So we're gonna be doing basically a AGS kind of like a delete. You can't really delete this though, because you still do have this connector that needs to stay connected, and I'll show you what we're going to be doing with this in order to relocate it and keep it so that way the check engine light on your car hopefully stays off and makes the car happy. So let's just remove our couple bolts here that we have on the two sides and on the bottom underside. We'll get this piece off, and then we'll also remove the lower grill too as well. Now we have the front grill and the shutter off of the car, so now we can detach these from each other with all these clips that go all the way around the top side and the back side. So just get underneath it with a like a screwdriver, and you'll pretty much just pull this apart one at a time here. Now with the two parts separated, that's exactly what we wanted. So this is the lower grill that rides right down here on the front bumper. I am going to be deleting this. I don't want to run it. It's going to restrict, I mean, it might be minor, but it's going to restrict the airflow. And for running this big front mount intercooler, the whole purpose is that we put it right in the front of the car where it gets the most amount of air. So now we need to figure out how to dissect this. So we have all of these blades right here. Every single one of these can get removed by these clips on these clips right here. So there's 8 blades in total on this. And this plastic piece right here, I know this piece unclips and will fold right up, and we can get this piece off. And then it looks like there's 2 bolts that hold in this main module that we need, that has that harness clip that you need to still retain on the car. Here's the harness clip on the car, and that's where that goes to. This is the one piece that connects and disconnects when you take the bumper on and off. So this is what that will need to stay hooked up to when we reinstall this somehow. Now we're going to remove these 2 bolts right here with this piece now off, and hopefully that should be enough to release this module right here that we need. All right, so that is now what does it. This is the piece that we need right here, and this is the arm that what we're gonna do is we're gonna set a screw somewhere in here. I'm gonna make sure and figure out where it is exactly to set it, so that way it makes this motor happy and the computer reads that this is working properly. Right now I'm going to be doing the AGS delete on this. So this is obviously the motor. Now I've seen people do this a couple of different ways. Basically what you're gonna do though is you need a screw that's about this size. I have a couple different ones here. I think this one will work the best. And what we're looking to do is basically set this somewhere in here to make this motor stop rotating and moving. Basically it's gonna make the car sense that it still has those grille shutters in place, so it won't trip a check engine light or anything like that, but obviously you don't have the grille shutters there. So what I've seen people do is you can either put a screw here up top in order to stop this lever from rotating all the way. You can put the screw down in here, right on this little lip that there is. You can screw it through there. There's not a whole lot of room for the screw to really go through, so you could easily break that if you do that incorrectly. So the one I feel most comfortable with doing, and obviously I don't know that this is actually going to work, is I feel most comfortable doing this one right here at the top. So we're gonna go ahead and screw this in, and I'm not gonna get it super tight, but just enough so that this will basically bump into it when it does rotate. Just like that, and we are in. Everything seemed okay on it. It did pull it out a little bit, this plastic piece right here, but that should not matter. When this does rotate over now, you can see it's right in track and in line with that. This will be good to plug in on the car, and I'll just need to clip it in and find a new spot to relocate this somewhere where it's easily accessible in case that we need to move this or do some adjusting here. One of the things that you also note too is that this lever is on the left side of this screw. We're gonna go ahead and start mounting this. First, we're gonna need to remove the old intercooler. I'm gonna start by removing the hoses that come on these back here. So I'll need to get these crappy clamps off, so that way we can get these hoses off on both sides, and then we can look at and see how the intercooler itself is mounted on here. Now with the piping off the car, looks like we're gonna have 2 bolts on the top of this intercooler. This whole ducting shroud piece here is a little bit in the way, and you may need to finagle this or remove some clips in order to get it out of the way. I might remove this clip, but the bolt that we're looking for this intercooler is right back there. Looks like it's gonna be a hex key bolt. So we got one over there on the inside of this ducting, and then the other one is going to be on the outside of this ducting, right down in here. T30. I removed both of the side shrouds out of the way. It's just a couple of simple clips, and then you're also going to need to remove a couple of the wiring harness pieces here that clip in. Some of these were in the way, so just remove these as needed. Not too bad. This side's completely off. That side is just laying down there. I also did have to remove like the horn. It was just one bolt right here. It was just in the way. And then both of the bolts are removed for the top parts. I just showed you that. All that's left is just to essentially pull this right out. It's just setting here in place. So we'll go ahead and give this a little tug, and it comes right out. Same thing over here. Just a little tug and right out. Now with this intercooler off the car, I figured I would just take a moment to set it up next to the other one that we have and just compare the two and see the differences. So clearly the stock one is quite a bit longer, but it's not quite as tall. This is slightly bigger. It's gonna give us just a couple more cubic inches for this turbo in order to cool it. You don't wanna go too big with an intercooler, especially on a turbo like this, because it's just going to be super laggy and you're gonna be waiting and waiting for that boost to spool up. So this is just the right size, and it should be perfect for my other supporting mods that I'm gonna be doing. I have a couple of blocks set down on the bottom here. This is going to be about where I'm going to mount this. I just have this roughly setting up on these blocks right now. If we take a look, the plan is I'm going to mount this on the back side of the crash bar right here using some brackets. So the kit did come with some of these brackets right here. You just need to bend these to shape. It's just a flat stock metal, and there's 2 mounting points on this. So the one over here and then the one on the other side. So what I'm looking at doing is bending this to a 90-degree bend. Once this is bent, we can go ahead and set this. One bolt will go in there, and then I will probably use some self-tapping screws to drill into the crash bar here, and we'll go ahead and mount it that way. Everything does look fine. The spots over here for the hose, so this is going to go into that little hole right there. So once I get my elbow on, I think that'll be pretty achievable. The only thing that I don't know of is if I do mount it, I don't know if the bumper is going to hit this or not. I don't think it'll be in the way, but it's kind of hard to say until we do get this in place. And luckily on these, so these do adjust a little bit, so you can slide things a little bit once it goes on. I think what we're gonna do now is bend these, go ahead and screw these in, and try to play with it a little bit and see if we can get this somewhere where we like it. And I do want this intercooler as tight as I can get it to the crash bar. I want this close to the front of the bumper as possible, just so there's a smaller gap in between the front bumper and where this sits. Now I have both of the brackets on here and screwed into place where I want them. This is about right. I need to make sure that the intercooler is centered exactly in the middle of this crossbar right here. Might need to go a tiny bit that way. Other than that, what I'm going to do is I will get the piping hooked up on here and just loosely test fit it on. Like I'd already mentioned, I believe that my pipe that's going to go back to the other intercooler piping back there is going to be a little bit too short. I'm going to have to get some longer pieces, but we'll get the red pieces on the ends here, and then I'm also going to work on taking off and removing the hoses from back here, so that way we can cut them off. I will need to cut off this factory clamp piece right here because that's not going to work with the setup. We're just going to be doing just some hose clamps instead of this weird clip thing. So we'll get these taken off, removed, and cut a nice clean end on these. With both hoses off of the car, we are also going to be replacing the clamps on everything for these intercooler pipes. These are just some of the factory clamps that it has. They're one-time use, they're very janky, and they just don't work that good, so I can't stand them. We just need to cut off this metal part right here so we can get that off. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take a clamp, put it around here, and set it up so that way we can make a nice clean cut with a razor blade. These are the results. Now we will install the couplers on the sides here and get these fastened down, and then we're going to take a look and see what piece we're going to need to connect up this piping to the existing piping that was there through that hole. Both of the 90-degree elbows are on the car. We're going to take a look and see how much piping we're going to need. I don't think this is going to be long enough. I can tell you that right now just by looking at it. But we need to reach from right here to the factory piping right here. Now these do have some movement and some play in them, and we're going to have to go through this little hole right there, which it looks like everything will align up pretty much perfectly, really. So let's get some measurements here for what we're actually going to need. I'm going to want to look for something that's going to be around 9 inches or so is what I'm going to be looking for, and that will give us enough room in here to move this forward and also link up this side. I was getting ready to order a couple of new parts for this. I needed a longer tube in here. Now before I went ahead and did that, I also sized up this tube here just to make sure it would fit in this back one, because this front one is 2.5 inch, the intercooler is 2.5 inch, elbow is 2.5 all the way through. Same thing with the pipe. Now back here, this factory hose that I cut off, so if we can see, that does not fit. This 2.5 inch is too big to be able to fit into this. This is, I just measured it out, this is 2 inch. So because this is a 2 inch, this is gonna have to get reduced down in size. Now we're gonna go ahead and mount and make sure that this is secured in here properly. I'm just going to lastly check and make sure that this is 100% dead center in the middle even. Before we go ahead and do that, I know it looks pretty centered as it is right now, but we'll just double check that. And I'm also not too worried about the front bumper not being able to fit on properly. I'm not going to test fit or anything like that. This is pretty much where this is going to go. There's nowhere else where this has to go that I can fit it. And taking a look at my other car, there's plenty of room back here behind this crash bar and all in this area. I did decide to put in a second screw too as well. I wanted 2 in here to make sure that this is completely secure. Intercooler's on here. I have the pieces of wood out of the way. It's now 100% holding itself up. It's on here pretty secure. Once we get those hoses in place on both sides, then it'll definitely be a lot more stable. In regards to the AGS module here, I think I may have found a solution that looks like it's gonna work pretty sweet. So the factory mounting for the intercooler hooked up into right here. That was the main bolt that it used. Using the same screw that came out, it's one of those hex screws. Here's the module, and I have one of those hex screws right here that was used for the intercooler. What I'm going to do, I believe, is take this, and if you stick this like this, so I have the screw in the bottom hole, and here's the set screw that I have. If you stick it up just like this, try to get camera so it can see it. So that set screw right there on the bottom can fit right into that factory spot, and the module is just going to hang here just like this. And that harness clip is going to be right on the bottom underside of it, so it's not too far from where the factory one is. It will not reach, but we can lengthen that up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut into that, I'll splice into it, and we're going to reroute this wire over here with that harness to meet this. The wire set is now complete. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and run this up and go ahead and clip this in. So it goes in, show you where this is. So here's the bottom of the harness where it clips in. Boom, just like so. I just loosely set on this whole front bumper on here to kind of test fit this intercooler and also see where exactly it is that I'm going to put in my decals that I can spray paint on here. Just fitting this on here also. So these are all the tabs that originally came on the bottom part. This is where the lower grill would have been that I have right here. So that's where the lower grill is. And that's what all these tabs go into. And then the shutter even goes behind that. But you can already see that one of these tabs is starting to dig into that intercooler, which I'm gonna have to try to bend those and make that look normal. But what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna chop all of these tabs off and just give it a nice, clean, flush look. And that's gonna allow this bumper to sit back on here a little bit further. I may also need to notch it out maybe a little bit right around these spots, right where these couplers and also this intercooler sits. We'll see. If not, we can push this intercooler back in a little bit more. I'm gonna show you real quick how I'm gonna do up this decal on my front mount intercooler. I'm doing a Mopar logo. What I did was I printed this out to the size that I wanted. What I'm gonna do is just take a little X-Acto knife and just very carefully go around and cut out each and every single letter in this. And once we do that, basically we're gonna get this taped up on that intercooler and get it centered. And from there, we can go ahead and shoot some of our paint over it. This is what it's gonna look like on the car. Right now, I'm just taking a couple measurements. We're just trying to get this dead center right now. Let's go ahead, we're gonna peel this off and we'll check out our work here. Here's the finished product. It turned out very well. I like it a lot. We're gonna go ahead, fasten up all these intercooler hoses and get everything nice and secured down. All right guys, so everything is now installed on this intercooler. We have all the pipes on. That's gonna be a wrap for the video. The only thing I have left to do with this is I'm missing a couple of hose clamps over here. So we're just gonna have to pick up a couple more hose clamps, install them on here, and that's gonna be pretty much about it. So thanks for tuning in and catch you in the next one.